Hello, and welcome to Book Witches with a B. I'm Orja.
And I'm Colleen.
And in our podcast, we do a deep dive into some of our favorite books using our degree backgrounds. I studied literature.
I studied sociology with a minor in literature and cinema.
So buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's season 3.
We made it. We have 3 seasons now.
We do. How crazy is that?
We did 2 whole books.
2 whole books. After our roller coaster of a season 2 with Fourth Wing, we've decided to come back to to come back to the land of Akatar. So we are going to be
Yay.
doing we're going to be doing book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury.
This is by many arguably the best book in the series. Just so you know.
Just so you know. This is all for this episode.
Impressed.
So, I
There
have
was a
my
lot that
physical book
happens.
again. There's so much that happens in these first 5 chapters.
I
and
know
I
we
think
always
you're
say
ready
that,
for
but like
it.
truly. I
Truly.
didn't realize I was like double checking to be like, okay, where does this end? And I was like, there's no way. That's a lot.
Were you listening to the dramatized version again?
I did not know. I got into a different series, so I was reading that, but I was like, oh, I read this like probably whenever we did the last one. Like the first book, I read all of them outside of Silver Flames. But then I was like looking, I got my Kindle. I was looking on my Kindle to make sure I knew where it ended. And then I was like, oh, I didn't realize that all happened in 5 chapters.
Yeah, truly just a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we get started with our chapter recap?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do this. So this book starts with this half a page scene. Maybe I'd always been broken and dark inside. Maybe someone who'd been born whole and good would have put down the ash dagger and embraced death rather than what lay before me. There was blood everywhere. It was an effort to keep a grip on the dagger as my blood-soaked hand trembled, as I fractured bit by bit while the sprawled corpse of the high fae youth cooled on the marble floor. I couldn't let go of the blade, couldn't move from my place before him. Good, Amarantha purred from her throne. Again. There was another ash dagger waiting and another fae kneeling, female. I knew the words she'd say, the prayer she'd recite. I knew I'd slaughter her as I'd slaughtered the youth before me. To free them all, to free Tamlin, I would do it. I was the butcher of innocence and the savior of a land. Whenever you're ready, lovely Feyre, Amarantha drawled, her deep red hair as bright as the blood on my hands, on the marble. Murderer, butcher, monster, liar, deceiver. I didn't know who I meant. The lines between me and the queen had long since blurred. My fingers loosened on the dagger and it clattered to the ground, splattering the spreading pool of blood. Flecks splashed onto my worn boots, remnants of a mortal life so far behind me it might as well have been one of my fever dreams these last few months. I faced the female waiting for death, that hood sagging over her head, her lithe body steady. Braced for the end I was to give her, the sacrifice she was to become. I reached for the second ash dagger atop a black velvet pillow, its hilt icy in my warm, damp hand. The guards yanked off her hood. I knew the face that stared up at me, knew the blue-gray eyes, the brown-gold hair, the full mouth and sharp cheekbones, knew the ears that had now become delicately arched, the limbs that had been streamlined, limned with power, any human imperfection smoothed into a subtle, immortal glow. Knew the hollowness, the despair, the corruption that leaked from that face. My hands didn't tremble as I angled the dagger, as I gripped the fine-boned shoulder and gazed into that hated face, my face, and I plunged the ash dagger into my awaiting heart. Whew. And I feel like that
Ouch.
helps us remember what we're coming into.
I did
This book
faintly
is in
forget that happened.
yeah. This book is in parts. So here we go with part 1, The House of Beasts. We open on Feyre vomiting into the toilet after waking up from her nightmare. It's been 3 months since Under the Mountain and Feyre's death and rebirth as a high fae. Feyre has been having trouble telling the difference between nightmares and reality, and she's also been having trouble adjusting to her bigger, stronger Fey body. They haven't heard from Rhysand about the bargain, though the tattoo remains on Feyre's hand. She ponders on her last experience with the High Lord of the mysterious, treacherous Night Court, admitting he hadn't felt like an enemy then. Tamlin is still fast asleep when Feyre gets back to bed. He never wakes when Feyre does from her dreams in a sick panic. They don't talk about Amarantha and the trauma they're both going through, because that would be letting her win, in quotes. Feyre is broken and she's suffering alone. For him, I had done this. For him, I'd gladly wrecked myself and my immortal soul, and now I had an eternity to live with it. Chapter 2.
Ouch. I forgot how depressing this this first half is. Gosh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Ooh.
Feyre tries to get Tamlin to let her go with him and his sentries to nearby spring villages to do what she can to help, and he refuses. Lucian tries to silently warn Feyre not to push Tamlin. Tamlin is concerned for Feyre's safety, not hearing her protest that she doesn't need extra protection. Tamlin and Feyre are engaged, apparently, have been for 2 months. We find out that Feyre's birthday is winter solstice, though she didn't mention it to anyone because she doesn't want the extra attention, fuss, or extra gifts. Feyre and Tamlin's wedding is now 2 weeks away, and Feyre is desperate to help and be useful. Tamlin once again denies Feyre. She's seen as a blessing by the Spring Court Fae, and if anything happened to her, it would be bad for the court's stability. This is a running theme, so get ready to hear those words about 1,000,000 more times.
Mm-hmm.
Lucian apparently hunted and killed Naga the day before and lied to Feyre for some reason. And we find out that there are more of Amarantha's beasts that are still lurking around that they need to hunt and kill. This is why Tamlin thinks it's not safe for Feyre out there. All of the servants in the manor cry and grovel with gratitude whenever they see Feyre. Even Alice won't let Feyre lift a finger because of what she's done to save Prythian. Feyre finally acquiesces and takes her time going back to the manor. She's been wearing bright, fluffy, cheerful dresses to please Tamlin and send the right message to the land, because if she dressed in her tunic and trousers with her daggers strapped to her, it would apparently send the wrong message. Feyre hasn't painted since Amarantha. She has also stopped thinking in colors and textures. I think that was the most stark difference.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of the first book is just a painting described to us of a bleak winter
Yeah.
wood. The beginning of this is just Feyre having a nightmare, reliving the horrors that she survived. Well, didn't survive.
Yeah, she really didn't. She was brought back to life. Bless her.
Enter Ianthe, high priestess, who had returned to the spring court. She worshipped Tamlin and Feyre, but Feyre counted her as a friend for her help with court life and wedding planning. And also we find out that Ianthe is the reason that Feyre is in all of these bright, fluffy, cheerful gowns. And then I'm going to read a description of her because I think that it is very interesting. All the high priestesses wore the billowing, artfully twisted and layered robes, though they certainly were far from matronly. Ianthe's slim waist was on display with a fine belt of sky blue, limpid stones, each perfectly oval and held in shining silver, and atop her hood sat a matching circlet, a delicate band of silver with a large stone at its center. A panel of cloth had been folded up beneath the circlet, a built-in swath meant to be pulled over the brow and eyes when she needed to pray, beseech the cauldron and mother, or just think. While wedding planning, we find out that Ianthe discouraged Feyre from training and learning to fight with her new Fey body because this would send a bad message to all the lands. Ianthe asks if Feyre's mortal kin are going to be attending, and Feyre says no, she hadn't invited them. She kind of wants to keep them away from Prythian and also what's become of her. They have no idea that she has died and become Fey. We also find out that the mating bond between Feyre and Tamlin hasn't snapped into place. And Feyre's like, yet. And she also muses that Ianthe, with her golden hair and her fair complexion and whatever, and being a high priestess, would actually make more sense as Tamlin's maid. We find out that the priestesses can marry, bear children, and dally as they please, and Ianthe apparently really likes to dally. We also find out that Feyre can't stand the color red anymore, and she specifically tells Ianthe that roses for the ceremony, whatever color other than red, please. She cannot stand the color. Ianthe's family,
I
we
did
find
not wear
out,
red on purpose.
yes.
Just throwing that out there. Did not think about that until just now.
How dare
This was
you?
just a color choice I made today.
It's okay.
I just bought
I'm
this
drinking.
cardigan and I thought it was cute. Yeah, but you literally did not paint yourself red.
I did not. It's a very cute cardigan. I don't think Farah would
It's
take
cute.
that as I think she would appreciate it if you changed, which you would do for her, so I think you'd be
I
fine.
would, yes. Yes, I just didn't think about that until you're like rose petals. I was like, oh
we
no.
fin- we find out that Ianthe had fled to a Fey isle called Valahan rather than suffer Amarantha's reign, which is interesting information. We also find out that in addition to all the bright, floofy, cheerful dresses that Feyre has been styled in, Ianthe also chose her wedding dress, which Feyre is not a fan of. Even Tamlin laughed at it when he saw it, but ended up agreeing with Ianthe and siding with her that this would send the right message to the Spring Court. This isn't even, we're in chapter 2, and I've said that a million times.
Yeah.
It's going to keep
I
happening.
duh. Duh. How I feel.
Yeah. We also find out that Ianthe is extremely interested in Lucian and finds ways to bring him up in conversation with Feyre, but Lucian is not very happy with those attentions. Feyre thinks that it might be because he can't forgive her and her family for escaping Amarantha's curse, you know?
Yeah. It's very astute
Later,
from Feyre, to be honest.
yes, yeah. Later that night, when Feyre is in bed, Tamlin walks in, worried that Feyre is up so late. She can't sleep, of course. Though they still have separate rooms, Tamlin has slept in Farah's room every single night, kind of like protecting her. I don't know if it's even that romantic. He kind of sleeps at the edge of her bed to make sure no one can get to her, essentially,
Yeah.
in beast form a lot of nights. They make love intensely, I put in parentheses.
Also, as far as we know, not in beast form.
Not in
I
beast
don't
form,
know.
no,
Yeah.
no, no, no.
Does she ever specify, I guess?
She
Not in
does,
beast form.
yes, not in beast
Okay.
form.
Not one of those books, yeah.
And then they have a brief conversation about their argument. Tamlin apologizes. Farah says it's fine, even though it's not. And then Tamlin tries to explain his need for Farah to be safe. They start discussing life after marriage and kind of start fooling around a little bit again. And Tamlin all of a sudden informs Farah that there's no such thing as a high lady. Farah is going to be Lady of the Spring Court, but not a high lady. And basically shuts Farah's further line of questioning with more sex. Lovely, Tamlin.
Great way to handle communication and conflict. It's really working.
Which brings us to chapter 3. The next day, Lucian is waiting to escort Feyre to a nearby village for inspection on the progress of rebuilding. Feyre thinks this must be because Tamlin feels very guilty about how he acted the day before. Feyre notices 8 sentries placed around the grounds, all watching her, which is crazy. 8 sentries. Feyre is no longer human. She is not like breakable anymore. And yet there's 8
Also, less
sentries.
centuries than when she was human. She
Yeah,
had less when she was human. Pretty certain.
she did. There were no sentries, in fact, when she was human.
Dumb.
Farah calls Lucian out for lying about his limp the day before and the Naga that he killed. And while they're talking about all of this, Farah's like constantly scanning her surroundings. We find out that she has a list of rooms in the manor that she can stand to be in based on the openness and ease of movement and how many exits they have for fleeing. So she's not doing well, folks. Lucian admits that Tamlin asked him to lie, and if Tamlin gives an order, Lucian has to follow it. Feyre points out that this wasn't the case before. She brings up the Suriel and how Lucian fought against orders to send her there. And Lucian argues that they were desperate then. Now they need rules, hierarchy, stability, and rank. Lucian is Tamlin's right-hand man. He sets the example. He can't push back in front of other people. She makes a quip about him. For as much as he doesn't like Ianthe, he sure sounds exactly like her right now. Everyone in Farrah's life is telling her that they need to send the right message.
That is such a wild. I can't explain why that's such a wild comparison at this point. Oh. Anywho. Sorry. Lucian is not like Ianthe. We're just gonna
He's not,
state
but
that right now.
he's not, but we will discuss in the deep dive how disappointed I am in him. Maybe in further episodes.
I think we can address it in this one. It's definitely probably the most glaring.
Yeah. Feyre also points out that when she was immortal, she didn't have any sentries or rules, and she actually fought off Naga, and she was running around. She didn't have any boundaries or rules about where she could go, and Lucian says that's because Tamlin didn't care for you then as he does now. You know, he's terrified of what could happen to you, which we need to discuss that in deep dive. We need to put a pin in that.
I have
Discuss
so many
that in deep dive.
thoughts. Ouch. First of all.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah,
role that
whatever.
there's a role that Feyre has to play, and she needs to get used to how things are. They talk about an event coming up called Tithe, and what will need to happen and how Feyre will need to act. Feyre protests that she can't stay cooped up forever. She just wants Tamlin. She doesn't want to be a High Lord's wife. She just wants Tamlin. But that's the way it has to be. Lucian says, he is both. He is Tamlin and he's a High Lord. There's not one without the other. They get to the village, and the villagers whisper Feyre Cursebreaker as they see her. Every place they go to offer help, they're refused. The debt is paid is the reason. We find out that Amarantha had camps for all of the Fae who weren't under the mountain. These camps were further beneath the mountain in tunnels, and basically all of the Fae that weren't either nobles or favored were kept underground without seeing the sunlight for 50 years. No one will accept help, and Feyre realizes that this will be her life. She's going to be useless and a symbol rather than a person, essentially.
Also, I feel like maybe an overestimation, but that's fine. I feel like after a while, they would get used to her being. It's just the first time it's gonna be weird, but that's a whole other thing.
Hopefully. All right, chapter 4. A few days till the wedding, Feyre is still thinking about the lack of equality and responsibility she's going to have with her relationship with her rest of her life as Tamlin's wife. She does say that she's glad she won't have to share kind of like the spotlight, but I think that the lack of equality in the responsibility she has for the people of the Spring Court, I think that she was maybe thinking that she would have more responsibility and be able to help more in a more meaningful way, but that's not happening. Guests have been arriving, and Feyre has been overwhelmed by greeting so many new Fae and being passed around and smiling day and night. She endures the parties, clinging to Tamlin and Ianthe, and letting the two of them lead conversations, and counting down the minutes until the parties end. On the night before the wedding, Ianthe introduces Feyre to Bronn and Hart, who are a couple of Spring Court sentries. And they casually discuss Feyre's trials under the mountain. They bring up the Middengard worm and are like, that was brilliant. And Feyre's blind panicking over here. No one says anything. Then the conversation casually turns to Rhysand, and Ianthe says that the High Priestesses are, quote, taking care of the bargain. They're trying to find a way out of it, I guess. On her way up to bed, Feyre sees Tamlin laughing jovially with some friends, and she realizes that she can't remember the last time she'd done the same. Feyre has a nightmare about the second trial, helpless as she is unable to read the riddle and save herself. She awakens and runs to open her window, letting the night sky and breeze calm her down. And then a new day dawns, and it's Feyre's wedding day. Her dress is atrocious, and I have a description.
This is one of my favorite, like, clothing descriptions in a book because it's so funny to me.
I really, truly hated my wedding gown. It was a monstrosity of tulle and chiffon and gossamer, so unlike the loose gowns I usually wore. The bodice fitted, the neckline curved to plump my breasts, and the skirts were a sparkling tent, practically floating in the balmy spring air. No wonder Tamlin laughed. Even Alice, as she dressed me, had hummed to herself, but said nothing. Making her way through the manor to where the ceremony will be, Feyre is not excited, other than to be done with it. She sees Tamlin and feels okay until she looks to the aisle and sees rose petals scattered down the aisle, white and red. And I'm going to read that because that I think seeing how she, like, what it does to her is really important. So, my vision narrowed on him, on my high lord, his wide eyes glistening as I stepped onto the soft grass, white rose petals scattered down it, and red ones, like drops of blood amongst the white. Red petals had been sprayed across the path ahead. She starts panicking, and she sort of starts begging for help in her mind to anyone who might be able to read her thoughts or see her panicking or listen. And no one does. And then I'm just going to read again because it's hard to summarize. Help me, help me, help me, I begged someone, anyone. Begged Lucian, standing in the front row, his metal eye fixed on me. Begged Ianthe, face serene and patient and lovely within that hood. Save me, please save me, get me out, end this. Tamlin took a step toward me, concern shading those eyes. I retreated a step. No. Then I'm going to skip more no's and people trying to get her to go down the aisle. I tried to get my traitorous lungs to draw air so I could voice the word. No, no, but I didn't have to say it. Thunder cracked behind me as if two boulders had been hurled against each other. People screamed, falling back, a few vanishing outright as darkness erupted. I whirled around, and through the night drifting away like smoke on a wind, I found Rhysand, straightening the lapels of his black jacket. Hello, Feyre, darling, he purred.
Yay! This is so good. This is such a dramatic entrance, and I love it
It's
deeply.
so good. Chapter 5. Rhysand is at the wedding, and chaos has erupted. He's there to call in his bargain. Feyre is in shock. She can't leave now, but Tamlin lets Rhysand whisk her away. Even, like, she's like, don't let him take me, and Tamlin's like, well, and Rhysand's like, you know there's nothing you can do, and Tamlin's like, don't hurt her, and Rhysand's like, yeah, whatever, and, like, whisks her away into darkness. The first thing she smells is jasmine, and then she sees stars. She's at the night court. The night court is quiet, peaceful, and beautiful. She is at Rhysand's private residence, and Feyre notices that Rhys's skin has tanned since she had last seen him, probably because he hasn't been locked under a mountain for 50 years. She's about to rage at Rhysand, but he informs her that he heard her begging to be saved, that maybe Tamlin hadn't noticed Feyre had been about to reject him in front of everyone, that he'd done Feyre a favor. Feyre asks what Rhysand wants. He wants a thank you, and then he reveals that he knows Feyre's been waking up with nightmares and vomiting every night, that she can't go into certain rooms, that she can't see certain colors, and asks if Tamlin even knows any of that. He finishes by telling her to rest. He'll tell her what he wants from her in the morning. Feyre is instructed to go to her room, not a cell or a dungeon, and informed that she will not be taken to any such place. Rhysand makes another quip about waiting for thanks, and Feyre throws her shoe at his head. He dares her to throw her other one. She does, and he catches it and is like, interesting, and walks away.
I love her.
I love that too. So good. Feyre's room is, quote, a dream, with huge open windows showing the starry sky and vast mountain range beyond, and a warm pool for soaking. I think it's like heated. There's like steam coming off of it. The next morning, Nuala and Ceridwen appear at Feyre's door. They are in full form rather than the shadowy beings that they'd been under the mountain. Feyre says she would not have even recognized them. After bathing, Feyre follows a tug at her gut to breakfast, And Rhys tells her more about her surroundings and the way that their bond works. Apparently, Rhys tries to respect Feyre's privacy, but can't help but hear what she pushes down it. Rhysand says he can train Feyre to build mental shields to keep him and anyone else out, and tells Feyre that he wants to teach her how to read in their week together. And that brings us to the end of chapter recap. Okay, so section superlatives.
Yes. Is the first one
Most
drama queen or
yeah,
wildest moment?
I think
I can't remember which one.
queen. I think drama queen's first.
I don't know. There's so much trauma involved. It's hard to label drama queen necessarily.
I would say Ianthe strikes me as drama queen.
I have a lot of thoughts about Ianthe. Even in this section, regardless of what happens later. Yeah, I would say Ianthe. I think we could say like maybe the rest of the spring court. Just like I get that they're wanting to be respectful. It's just like all of it just seems like a lot.
It does
For
seem like a
anyone.
lot, and it seems like Feyre absolutely hates it. Like, it makes her feel
That's fair.
so horrible.
Well, she has to relive her trauma. No one wants to do that. If someone was constantly talking about the thing that upset me, I would also have a breakdown.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah, bless her.
Poor Feyre. Also, I think I know it's not fair. I know that Tamlin's going through his own trauma journey, but I think that he's being a drama queen.
I think he's being selfish more than a drama queen, but I would agree
That's
with
fair.
you. What I know of later, I would agree. But everyone processes, their stuff differently, and I understand that, and not everyone processes it the same way. But he's not allowing Feyre to process it or giving her anything that she needs to process it her way. He's forcing her to process it the way that makes him the most comfortable.
Agreed. Can
Yeah.
we nominate Rhysand for honorary drama queen?
Oh, honestly, yeah, his entrance. That is the most like I do local theater entrance I've ever seen. Not in a negative way, but that's what that means. Especially with the thunderclap. I don't think I ever processed that. As far as we know, his power doesn't involve thunder. Like I think he like
He did it.
made a sound. Like
Yeah.
he somehow made a sound
He
when
was
he
like,
came in. I don't know
I'm
how.
gonna make an entrance.
Yes. I actually think he should be the drama queen. I agree. Just the whole, especially like fixing his lapels, like it's very James Bond of him.
It is.
Like he did like a James
Hello.
Bond entrance.
Hello, Feyre,
Hello, Feyre.
darling. It's
Calling her darling on her wedding day. Wild.
iconic. He is the drama.
He is the drama. This is Damon Salvatore. I can picture Damon Salvatore popping out, just being like, "Hello." I think the church scene.
Yes.
We've seen it a lot of times where he like dips in the hello. That is the scene.
That is the scene. This is so
Yes.
Damon coded. You're so right.
This whole book is, but this particular scene really is.
When did this book come out? Do you think that Sarah J. Maas
Come out.
like modeled Rhysand off of Damon Salvatore?
There's so many parallels. I feel like it
They're
has to
so
be.
similar. And like Tamlin's
Let me see if I can
definitely
find.
Stefan.
Yeah, sadly for him. I'm not a Stefan girly, if you can't tell.
First published in the
Really
United
sweet.
States, 2016.
Look at me being right.
Look at
April
that.
2016. Okay, so yeah, that would
So
probably.
yeah,
I don't know if Vampire Diaries was still on air, but I would say it was still pretty popular
it
at
was
that point,
definitely
if
still
not.
popular. That was the
Yeah.
year I graduated college, so it was definitely still popular.
Yeah.
Next
Couple years.
superlative, shall we? Craziest thing to happen.
The Rhys coming into the wedding, by far. I did not know that spoiler when I read. I had a lot of the first book spoiled for me. I didn't have a lot spoiled for this book for me. I had no clue that was happening.
I had none of this. I had none of any of it spoiled for me. So I was just like, oh my God.
It's such a fun dramatic thing, I feel
It
like.
is. Yeah. Do we have any other superlatives that we want to add?
I know we had different ones for A Court of Thorn and Roses, but I can't remember. We had like specific Feyre and Tamlin like stuff, I think. Like
Oh, those segments are coming back. We had Tam Tam as Dum Dum and Feyre as Dum Dum.
okay, so then we didn't do those in the superlatives. I can't think of
Yes.
anything.
All right.
So no.
Great. Let's bring back another fan favorite segment. Are they hot or are they a beast?
It's truly my favorite segment, I think.
So, we went into a lot of detail in the first season about this whole Beauty and the Beast comparison because
Mhm.
the first book is a Beauty and the Beast retelling.
It is.
It is it is no longer a Beauty and the Beast retelling. But I'm gonna bring back one of my favorite theories where A Court of Thorns and Roses is Beauty and the Beast, but opposite. You know, we had
Mm.
going from a bleak world to a beautiful enchanted one. There was a few other things that I was like, oh, well, Belle is a reader, Farah can't read. There's a few like
Yeah.
opposites there. I think
Mhm.
that this first section of chapters that we've read, it does draw a line through. So obviously in Beauty and the Beast, she kisses him, breaks the curse, he turns into a human, he's no longer a beast. I
Mhm.
feel that Tamlin is much more of a beast now.
He is, but not in the fun way.
No, he's no longer hot and a beast. He is just a beast.
He has turned beastly. He's still pretty.
He's
So
still pretty.
what I thought you were going to with this is, like many people when watching Beauty and the Beast, um, a little disappointed when the Beast turned into Adam. I was expecting like a different looking person, still a very pretty person, but like it was so opposite from his beastly form. Like I know they were trying to differentiate him from Gaston, but I feel like Gaston looks more like what I would picture someone that changed from a big
Mhm.
furry beast into. So to
Mhm.
me, this is actually still kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, except for it's what happens
It's what happens after.
once. It's what happens afterwards once Beauty realizes maybe that she was more into Beast Adam than she was into Human Adam.
I love that. I agree. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think I guess we can say he's technically both still, but I think he's much more beastly.
I think you get, which is the point of it. I think Feyre gives him a lot less of like attractive descriptors and gives a lot more like she almost always talks about him either in like we never get like a direct really conversation with them, hardly at all. She's always talking about him like looking at him from afar or talking about a previous conversation. He's never actively like I think you can really feel her loneliness because of that because not actively with him a lot of the
Mhm.
time. So I think it's yeah, we're getting less of that as like he's so handsome outside of their, sexy times.
Yeah.
That's really the only time we
Yes.
get that. But
Lucian,
both.
both still.
Both still, I think he has less of a beast quality, but he still is kind of. I think he lost some of his foxness in this. He's like less
Because he doesn't have a
cunning and
fox
more.
mask on anymore.
Like, I mean, maybe he's like, I don't have the mask anymore, but like, I do think he lost some of his like cunning and I don't know. You can definitely tell he's not handling Tamlin well,
Mhm.
and so he's just kind of I don't know, going through the motions almost, I feel like. He's
Mhm.
still pretty, but I do think we lost the mechanical eye thing I think is a little bit not that that's beastly, but like it's definitely not
Mhm.
like fair.
It's
So there's some
rugged.
elements of it in there. But okay, yes, there we go. But yeah,
Yes.
I would say he lost a lot of people. If anything, Feyre became more beastly, I would say.
Yes, she did. That
Yeah.
brings into the whole otherness of Fae. I think as a mortal human, she only, I mean, she sensed the beastliness, but
Mm-hmm.
saw the beauty. And now that
Mm-hmm.
she's Fae, she talks about like breaking silverware, breaking glasses because she's unaware of her own strength, like sort of
Mm-hmm.
lumbering and clumsy. She's not used to the length of her limbs anymore.
Which is so interesting. I can't imagine that she talks about not wanting to see her sisters yet or whatever, but like she's probably like at least 6 foot tall now. Like she's so much
Yes.
taller. All of a sudden. That would be wild. Like, why do you look like that? What happened?
Yes. And then
Yeah.
poor Farah, like just imagining, I think she would almost be less, I think she might feel less of a beast herself if she could dress the way she wanted to in like a tunic and trousers. I feel like it would be a little bit more in balance there, but she's in these like ridiculous pastel floofy gowns that
Yeah.
she's like, this isn't who I am on the inside. She's like, I am a beast on the inside.
Well, she's human on the inside. She wants to dress like a human, and they're dressing her like a fae to reflect us on the outside, which I think is
Hmm.
hard because that's not what she
Yes.
sees or views herself as. Yeah.
No. Yeah. Ianthe.
I mean, she is technically both. I think she's more beauty in this
Hmm.
section. I think there's some I'm going to talk a little more about that later, but there's something kind of like clearly a little bit cunning with her,
Hmm.
I would say, but she's pretty. I mean, she's
Yeah,
supposed
I
to be
would say
pretty.
she's, yeah, I would say she's just hot right now. I
Mhm.
didn't go over this in the chapter recap, but Ianthe doesn't have any magic that Farah can tell.
Mhm.
Like priestesses, high priestesses are supposed to get their power from like the ceremonies and stuff that they do, and Farah is like watching to see if she can like sense it, and she's like, I don't know, but maybe I just don't like understand it. So I think Ianthe is very much less beast, more just hot right now.
Yes, she weaponizes that, but she is just hot. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Brawn and Heart, they're dumb dumb.
I love them a lot. They're so cute. I think they're just hot. They're a little beastly in a way, I guess, but they're just really kind. I don't think they meant any harm bringing up anything with Feyre. They were just like,
No,
you're so freaking cool.
they give golden retriever energy.
They do. I really like them
Hmm.
a lot.
I know, I do too. They're just like,
They're so fun.
all right. I don't know if we have anyone else that I mean, Rhysand.
Always both.
Always both.
Always both. That will not change.
The moment that Feyre throws her shoe at him, I didn't mention it. I just said that he like dares her to throw another. He snarls at her. I dare you. And she's like, good. And she throws the other one at him.
We've not had a lot of snarling in these books yet. Buckle up.
Buckle up. Oh,
Happens a lot. So much in this book.
so much. Ooh.
Yeah.
Um,
From like not even just Rhysand, like so many of them. Like
a
this
lot
is
of them.
we get to see a lot of like Fae stuff in this. Like we got kind of an
Yes.
introductory, we get a lot more with this book.
Yeah, and I
So
do think it's because she herself is now Fae.
yes. Yeah.
I think she herself probably snarls.
Oh yeah, no, when she absolutely was snarling as she chucked that shoe at his head.
She definitely was. Ugh.
Honestly
Okay.
impressed if the dress was that fluffy that she was able to reach in, get the shoe, and chuck it.
I
Cause
bet
like
you he
nearly
was
impossible.
because he was laughing at her dress like a second before.
Uh-huh. It's impressive, truly. As someone who's wore like big dresses, like there's so many layers to get
Yeah,
down to there.
just how. It's fine.
Yeah, truly.
Let's move on to Colleen's Corner, shall we?
Colleen's
Sure.
Corner.
Here we go, Colleen's Corner.
Woohoo! Okay, so I have thinking of like interpersonal relationships. There's a lot that we could talk about in this section. One that I think is really interesting personally when I was reading this section was just in this section, I will state, Feyre's relationship between herself and Ianthe. because Feyre's not really had friends outside of Lucian. She's not really had female friends. Her sisters really didn't get along with her. There's a light mention of Claire Better, but that was Elaine's friend, not her. She comes into the spring court. Alice is kind of her friend, but I think that relationship is complicated. There's a power dynamic there
Mm-hmm.
that makes that hard to be like a friendship. It's more like a mother-daughter relationship.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think it's really apparent how desperate Feyre is for female companionship. And it makes me really sad for her that Ianthe was the version of this that she got. Essentially, this is like a very, like, I don't know, female experience, I guess, maybe, where you meet someone, they seem like they're your best friend, they're trying to help you, they're making all these decisions for you. And, like, in your mind, especially when you're hurting and struggling, she even, like, goes through, she's like, oh, well, I let Ianthe make those decisions because it was just too much
Yeah.
for me to handle. Like, I couldn't handle, like, she wanted to plan my wedding, she can plan my wedding. I could really care less, I just want to be married, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so it seems like, from, like, Feyre's perspective, she's like, well, Ianthe's helping me. And, like, she even talks about, like, being excited, like, wanting Ianthe to be around and seeing, like, I mean, very clearly, like, telling her to wear all of these dresses that she's not comfortable in to, like, make everyone else more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
around her, kind of thing. It's very clear that Ianthe, even in this section, is, like, manipulating and moving her forward. And it makes me, like, sad for Feyre because she already has all of this trauma, like, at the hands of a female, to be honest, dealing with all of that stuff. Comes into it, thinks she found this, like, kindred spirit. And then Ianthe's just a mean girl. And I don't like it. It makes
Yeah.
me really sad for her.
Yeah.
And she just deserves better. I don't know. It's really interesting to me. I think a lot of people, it's more subtle. I think females can be more subtle with it, like Tamlin, and I think that relationship feels a little more overt with him, like, ignoring her and wanting his thing. But I think Ianthe's, like, fluffy, light, like, witchy kind of vibe
Mm-hmm.
makes her feel less threatening,
For sure.
and therefore, Feyre's not as on her guard with it, essentially.
Yeah. I also think just in the same way, it is so sad that Ianthe is like the friend that Feyre has to rely on. But just
Yeah.
thinking about how many times in these first 5 chapters we've heard the men in Feyre's life tell her it has to be this way because we need to send the right message. And then Ianthe, right along, she's saying you have to look this way because it sends a good message. When Ianthe picks out all of these crazy dresses and then the wedding dress that Ianthe's like, well, it sends a good message. Why would you need to train and fight? You don't need to. You can just sit there and be pretty and let people be thankful that you saved their lives. It kind of makes it like there's there is absolutely no one on Farrah's side at all.
No. And this is a really common thing just in which there's been a lot of discussion recently about this, but there's people, and a lot of times it's women. So there's always, like, a group of women, sadly, that are,
Mhm.
being oppressed. They have something going on, something is happening to them. The men in their life are telling them, no, you must behave this way, you must act this way. And, these women are often trying to reach out, trying to find things, and they find women in their life hoping that they would relate, like they're in similar situations to a degree. And the women in their life are like, no. Like, those women will align themselves with that male viewpoint because
Mhm.
they think it will save them from the same fate that this person is going through.
Mhm.
And that's, like, hard. I think hard pill to swallow, especially when you're, like, really looking for that, and when it's, like, put in this, like, really sweet, syrupy context. It's just, like, so heartbreaking because it takes a little while for you to realize it at
Y-
times. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
ugh, I love female friendship so much, and just seeing, like, how it's being manipulated for Feyre in this moment where I think she really needs it, because, like, the one friend she really did have was Lucian, and Lucian is mostly focused on Tamlin, which
Mhm.
does make sense. Tamlin is his longer term friend, but there,
Yes.
like you said, there's
And
no one
his
on,
leader.
and his leader, and basically the savior of his life. So there's a really complicated situation going on there. Still mad at him for all of it, but we can get to that later. But Feyre is just searching for someone that is on her side, and I really think she thought Ianthe was, and I still think in this section she still thinks she is,
Mhm.
and I
Uh
think maybe to
until
Mhm.
the red rose petals.
Until the red rose petals, but I don't know how. Like, to be honest with you, that could be very easily explained to being like someone accidentally put them down before you came,
Oh
didn't want to make a
no.
scene. I am aware. I have never felt more rage than when I saw those stupid blood red petals. Also, like, it's not even if, like, in my head, like, it was so clearly a calculated thing because, like, if it's supposed to be, like, the spring court, right? Red is not a spring color.
No.
It is not a spring color. She's been
Use
dressing her in
pink and
pastels.
yellow. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been dressing her in pastels. She knows there was no need to be putting them down. Autumn court, absolutely, absolutely would make sense.
Yes.
Not the autumn court. So yeah,
No.
I has some strong. Also, this is just the description. Just a little fun fact, and this is not a dig at anyone who had an '80s wedding. But like the big poofy tulle dress and the bright red rose petals is like the very exact description of like American, like mainstream '80s weddings.
Yes.
I am pretty certain it's very close to my mother's wedding. I could be wrong. My mom had a big, like, poofy dress. I can't remember if her color was red or not, but I think so. So, I'm sure she'll tell me after she sees this. But anyhow,
Yeah.
I think it's
My
interesting.
mom got married in the 80s as well, but she had an Indian wedding. So,
Yes, I figured that was different. That's why I tried to
yeah.
specify, like, yeah, I guess I could have said white, but it's not always white. But anyhow, yeah, very American style weddings. But
Yes. Yes. All right. I move that we skip the Feyre and Tamtam are Dum Dum segments for this episode because
yeah,
they're both dealing with a lot. And I think it's unfair to brand their emotions this early on as dumb. Feyre's not being dumb at all, Tamlin's being
no,
a little dumb with the ignoring Feyre, but he's going through his own issues.
yes, yeah,
So,
agreed.
let's go into deep dive, shall we?
Woohoo! Yes.
Time for a deep dive.
That's where the rest of these come into play.
Where the rest of them come in makes sense.
Okay. Let me look at my notes. Deep dive.
Boop.
Oh, okay. So, in sort of like talking about world building, in this series, we've come across Calanmai,
Mm-hmm.
Fire Night. We
Fire Night,
had
yes.
we had the summer solstice as well. And I don't know, they were under the mountain maybe for fall, so I don't know if there was anything in fall.
You know, I don't know. I mean, there's like an autumn equinox, but I don't know if they celebrate it. I mean, there is such thing as an autumn equinox,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But
I don't know.
we do get a little bit of information about the winter solstice, which,
Yeah.
yes, which happens to be Farah's birthday as well,
Interesting.
which, yes, very interesting.
Makes her a Capricorn, by the way.
It
Just
does.
tidbit. Yes.
So, in the spring court, winter solstice is 3 days of feasting, drinking, and gift giving, and an odious ceremony, quote, on the longest night to bring in the rebirth of a new year. It's argued, or rather, it is a disputed fact whether this holiday originated, like the traditions originated in the day or winter court, but both hold winter solstice as their holiest holiday, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Just because it's called you know, the day court hates it that it's called winter solstice because they're like, it's also our day. They get all the credit.
Yeah. I wonder if the night court holds it as a holy holiday,
Well, I mean, it's the longest night of the year. It would have to be, I would think.
right?
If anything,
Why
it'd
did
probably
it?
be the more
I feel like
like
it
a
should be
night
night
court holiday.
courts, but that's fine.
I agree. Interesting.
Yes.
It could also technically be, if it's Tamlin explaining this to Feyre, I feel like he would take out any sort of night court viewpoints.
Yeah. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about Feyre feeling she's like desperate to do something. She
Mhm.
keeps saying in these chapters that the reality of her eternity dawns on her. She doesn't know how long she's going to live now. They live for centuries, you know? And for most of her life that she can remember, she's been fighting to provide for her family, to keep them alive, to keep herself alive. And then she fought for 3 months under the mountain and died. And now she's been brought back as Fae. All she wants to do is help. She even offers to assist with the rebuilding of the spring court. She's like, let me hunt for them, let me
Yeah.
bring them food. And I think it's really important to remember where she came from, because Tamlin is not only denying her ability to heal and like cope with her trauma, he's also actually denying her any sense of normalcy. Like,
Yeah.
not she did die. I feel like she just feels like she just died, and
Yeah.
what she is now is like she's not even who she was before. It's not even the same
No.
life.
It's not the same life. It's definitely incredibly different. Like she doesn't, like, she's had trauma in the past, I would say, but I think what she's come out of, I know I bring up trauma a lot, but it truly is such a big chunk. I mean, that's very clearly why she's reacting. She's vomiting as much as she is. Um, I think a maybe real world comparison for this. So when talking about particularly women who have gone through some sort of abuse, there's kind of two different camps, essentially. Not two different camps, but kind of. So, there's like the domestic violence situation, and then there is the human trafficking one. And this like difference of what they want to do once they're out of situation comes up a lot. And when I worked in the shelter, they talked about sometimes it was hard for them at first to understand the girls who had been trafficked. So the domestic violence victims, usually when you go into a domestic violence shelter, they're like, oh, it's like a spa day. We want you to relax, kind of similar to what Tamlin's trying to do with Feyre. Like, you've done your duty, you've done your things, you've experienced all of this stuff. Like, you just need to rest, go paint, relax, do all of this stuff. And often, not always, but for people who have experienced domestic violence, that's healing and comforting for them, because that's what they were needing at the time. Those that have experienced sex trafficking, on the other hand, are very used to actively working, kind of similar to Feyre. She's very used to actively working, providing, going through all of this stuff, went through those trials. Sitting still for them drives them crazy. Crazy is not the right word, but like they get like stir crazy. Like, they can't hardly do it. They want to go, they want to work, they want to do these things. Like, the resting and relaxing part of it is not therapeutic for them. And I think that's kind of the camp that Feyre is in. Like, she has to actively doing something, or she's, I mean, very clearly just going, like, she just can't handle, like, sitting alone, like, sitting down for her is like sitting with her thoughts, and she can't handle that at this point in time.
Yes, very clearly, especially since she cannot always differentiate between what's real and what's not. Not only in her nightmares, even like when she is awake and interacting with people, something will bring her back and she can't differentiate.
Very strong PTSD. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just so sad.
it is. Poor Feyre.
And like, again, I'm sure Tamlin's going through the same thing. We don't get to see his perspective in
That's
this book,
true.
but the way he's handling it is, you can't impose your trauma response on somebody else.
It is the Dane of it all.
It is the Dane of it all.
It's
It
the
is.
Dane
I
of it
hate
all.
it.
It's the I will protect you regardless of what you need.
It's also the Stefan of it all, for being real honest.
Blech.
That was his, like, all of it the whole time.
Yeah. Yes. Let's talk about Tithe.
Does that happen in this section?
We're introduced to it in this section.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I
yes.
have the description of what it is. Also, he like brings this up to Feyre. Lucian brings Tithe up to Feyre, knowing that she doesn't know what it is, and doesn't tell her until she actually has to ask him, which we can talk about later, Lucian.
Cracks me up a little bit, because to me that's the most Lucian thing he's done this whole time. By far. That is exactly how him and Feyre were in the first section.
Okay. Twice a year, usually around the summer and winter solstices, each member of the spring court, whether they're high fae or lesser fairy, must pay a tithe, dependent on their income and status. It's how we keep the estate running, how we pay for things like sentries and food and servants. In exchange, Tamlin protects them, rules them, helps them when he can. It's a give or take. This year, he pushed the tithe back by a month, just to grant them that extra time to gather funds to celebrate. But soon emissaries from every group, village, or clan will be arriving to pay their tithes. As Tamlin's wife, you will be expected to sit with him, and if they can't pay, you will be expected to sit there while he metes out judgment. It can get ugly. I'll be keeping track of who does and doesn't show up, who doesn't pay. And afterward, if they fail to pay their tithe within the 3 days' grace he will officially offer them, he'll be expected to hunt them down. The high priestesses themselves, Ianthe, grant him sacred hunting rights for this.
I do remember reading this the first time, and my immediate thought was, so they've been engaged for like 2 months, which seemingly he proposed like the moment they hopped out from under the mountain, right?
It was a month after.
Okay, so they've been engaged for 2. It's a month after she got out,
They've been out for
and then
3
he gave
months.
them. They've been out for 3 months, so they've been stuck under the mountain for 50 years.
He gave them
People
4
have been out for
months.
3 months.
Yeah. Tithe is coming up.
Totally enough time for them to rebuild their lives and offer up the things that they need. I remember thinking, like, what was the point? Like, I don't know. I think I would have not suggested that he did a tithe this close to them
Give
coming
them a
out from
year.
under the mountain.
Give them a year.
Huh?
Give them 2 years.
Yeah, give them like at least a year. Like, I think a year would be reasonable. Like, because like you may not, and just maybe cut back the tithe in the first year. Like, give them some time to like rebuild and do things, and
Yeah,
then
especially
like, it's just not logical.
because not only were these villages burnt, they're in the process of rebuilding villages that have been burned to the ground. These people have been under a mountain for 50 years.
What are they supposed to give? Their blood? Like, they have literally nothing. Like, a lock of hair. Like, what do you want from me? I would truly be like, what do you want from me? Like, I have nothing.
Like, yeah.
I
I don't
understand the
claim.
concept of a tithe.
Yes.
Like, I get that, and I get what you would like. I get that they don't seemingly have taxes and things to rebuild. Fair enough. Like, that's the concept of the tithe is not what I'm struggling with. The timing of this tithe, on the other hand,
Are
is
they
so
really
dumb.
that strapped for cash if they're planning an extravagant way? I guess it's like the message that they send, I guess.
That gown is not cheap.
That that gown is not
That
cheap.
ugly gown
It
is
is
not
an
cheap.
expensive piece of trash.
All of her gowns, they're not probably trash, but they're just not for Feyre. I just picture a bunch of silky, if you know what a silky gown is.
Mm-hmm.
Feyre was just running around the spring court in a bunch of silky gowns all the time,
Yes.
which are not cheap, by the way. So,
No.
they're not.
Okay, I have a few more things to read. I wanted to read a description of the night court.
Ooh. The jasmine thing really struck me because one of my favorite scents is jasmine, by the
I
way.
love jasmine. Yes.
I do too. It smells
Because
so good.
there's night blooming jasmine is the thing that exists if you don't know that, so makes a
I
lot of
did
sense.
not know that, but I do love the smell of jasmine, so.
So the jasmine whatever, welcome to the night court. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. Whatever building we were in had been perched atop one of the gray stoned mountains. The hall around us was open to the elements, no windows to be found, just towering pillars and gossamer curtains, swaying in that jasmine scented breeze. It must be some magic to keep the air warm in the dead of winter, not to mention the altitude or the snow coating the mountains, mighty winds sending veils of it drifting off the peaks like wandering mist. Little seating, dining, and work areas dotted the hall, sectioned off with those curtains or lush plants or thick rugs scattered over the moonstone floor. A few balls of light bobbed on the breeze, along with colored glass lanterns dangling from the arches of the ceiling. Not a scream, not a shout, not a plea to be heard. So, that's the night court.
It sounds
I just,
stunning.
it sounds beautiful.
sounds beautiful. It sounds incredible. Like, I think the spring court is pretty, but that, like, lushness that she's describing, like, even, like, jasmine's a very lush smell to me.
It
Like, it's a
is.
very lush,
Yes.
like, feeling place, I feel like.
It is. In addition to that, so there's like thick carpet on the floor. Then her room, a dream, is this like beautiful open space, but the bedding is described as extremely comfortable and plush. I don't think Feyre actually has a nightmare. Or if she does, she doesn't like have to get up and vomit in the night because of like the cool night air breeze like wafting through and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very
I
interesting to
love it.
me.
I would never get out of bed.
No.
Ever. It
And
sounds like my
then,
dream hotel vacation.
right? Yes. And then
Yeah.
going on about the night court, I think there was one more thing. So we know it's spring court, it's eternally spring. We don't know, we
Mm-hmm.
haven't been to any of the other courts before. But when Pharaoh
Mm-hmm.
wakes up, it is daybreak. The sun does indeed come out. So I thought it'd always be dark here, I said, if only not to look quite as desperate for that life-giving tea so early in the morning. We're one of the 3 solar courts, he said, motioning for me to sit with a graceful twist of his wrist. Our nights are far more beautiful, and our sunsets and dawns are exquisite, but we do adhere to the laws of nature. And the other courts choose not, and do the other courts choose not to? The nature of the seasonal courts, he said, is linked to their high lords, whose magic and will keeps them in eternal spring, winter, fall, or summer. It has always been like that, some sort of strange stagnation. But the solar courts, day, dawn, and night, are of a more symbolic nature. We might be powerful, but even we cannot alter the sun's path or strength. So,
I feel
just
like he's judging them a little bit. He's judging the seasonal courts a little bit. He thinks
our
that the daylight
our
courts are better
drama
or whatever.
queen is definitely judging them a little bit.
I also think it's interesting that it's described as their will, which means in theory, if they choose to unwill it, will it no longer be a seasonal court?
Huh.
I have some thoughts about that we can talk about. Not specifically recording, but right?
That's a great question.
I've never thought about that, but like when you read it, it said they will it that way, and I'm like, wait, what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Also, does that mean so then in theory they can control the weather? Right? They can control the
I mean,
well, not in theory, they can control the weather. In
yeah,
theory, then, if Tamlin has it ever rained in the spring court before? No. But would it rain if Tamlin decided he wanted it to?
I feel like if he decided he wanted it to, it would rain constantly because he is a sad emo boy.
He is a sad emo boy.
He would
But
love the
then,
rain.
like, but yeah, I don't think we've ever seen a rainy day in the spring court now that I think of it.
We don't get a lot of like outside of like temperature descriptions. I don't really feel like we get a lot of like.
Well, it's always sunny and the birds are chirping.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I guess
Huh.
it's fair. I mean, I guess it's stuck. It's like it's like they took a snapshot of like the perfect spring day, and that's what you get. Like they waited till the sunny, flowers were always blooming, like that peak of spring, and it's like, there you go.
That's so interesting. I
Like
literally never thought of that.
I haven't really either. Like it's not explored all that much in theory. Like it's mentioned. Like
Mhm.
in this, I feel like this is by far the most description we really get of how it works.
Yeah. Night court. Also, so not only are these courts, I mean, we know that they're different just based upon the whole winter solstice thing. We know they have different traditions and cultures too, in theory. We just don't get a lot about it. The clothes at the night court. Feyre is basically wearing like silk palazzo pants and a silk crop top that are super comfortable with like silk slippers
That's what I want to wear every day. That's
for the
essentially what I
rest of
wear
my
every day.
life.
Just not. It's just not in silk, but that's essentially what I wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and then as compared to, so like it's like very, it's that lush, right? It's sleek, lush, like luxury sort of, without being overstated. Whereas the spring court is extremely, unbelievably overstated with its like frills and the gowns, and even Ianthe, like she's not wearing like the fluffy dresses, but she is wearing an extremely like not subtle outfit.
Yes, no one in the spring court is subtle, which I guess I would not necessarily say that anyone in the night court is subtle either, but it's like it's stated wealth in a way that's like, I don't know, the whole concept of like quiet luxury versus loud luxury. Like
Yes.
the night court would carry like, oh gosh, why can't I not think of like a more subtle brand? I don't know, like Louis Vuitton would be like the, the spring court, you know, designer bag of choice, and then I don't know, the Row or something that's probably not comparable, but you know what I mean, like a more understated brand that I'm not wealthy enough to know about,
Very
would
much
be
so.
carried by the night court.
Rhysand has his sleek black fitted outfits tailored to perfection,
Yeah,
but
always.
they're just plain black, right?
Yes.
Tamlin, his stuff's not tailored to perfection. It's loose, it's rugged, but it's also opulent.
It's like very
Yeah.
brocade fabric. I
Yeah.
feel like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bless him.
Also, I didn't mention it in the chapter recap because we were running pretty late, but after Feyre throws her second shoe at Rhysand, he walks away and Feyre hears like a faint, amused female voice and a snarl from Rhysand before she walks up to her room. So definitely interested to see what that's about. I'm guessing we'll find out in the next episode.
Whoever that is could care less. That whole interaction, I would love to be whoever that person was, just standing there watching it. I cannot imagine.
Cannot.
I would
Also,
also, my chuckle would not be faint.
no, I would be cackling.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Also, though, Rhysand does snarl at them. Like, we still don't really know how dangerous he is. The
Yeah,
fact
no, but
that someone was laughing makes me think that he probably didn't do anything to her, but like,
yeah, we also don't know. Yeah, we also don't know the age of the person giggling. It could be like a child,
it could
I
be.
guess. But yeah, I don't know. We definitely don't have. We know he's intense, and we know that like, I mean, seemingly even Tamlin was afraid of him,
Mm-hmm.
and like Tamlin's one of the more powerful people she's met, so that's and like I guess was it in the first book he was described as like, well, I guess he was given more of his power than the others in theory, but he definitely seemingly had a little bit more power
He did seem to have
than the
more.
others. But we don't know if it's because he
Yes.
just had access to more, or if he is actually considered more powerful than the others.
Right. Yeah, no idea. It's interesting.
Who knows?
Anyways,
I guess
that's
we'll
all I
see, because
had
she's going to
for
be there for a week.
she's gonna be there for a
I
week.
think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to bring up just like his plan for her for the week is really interesting.
Yes.
To me, was that what you were going to talk about? Yeah. It's just like, he's like, you're going to be here. I'm going to teach you to read. Like, you have no choice. You're going to learn.
Yeah.
Regardless. Yeah. Which she's been, I will say in Tamlin's defense, he did try. Feyre refused.
This is true.
Like, flat out refused because she was embarrassed.
Yes.
I don't think she gives two craps about being embarrassed in front of Rhysand.
No, she
Could care
hates him so
less.
much.
Yeah. She's like, I think it's like almost what she needs to probably learn. Because she is like, if I'm going to embarrass myself, could care less about you. It's fine.
Yeah. I also
Yeah.
like that he like dropped in at her wedding, pulled this extremely dramatic entrance and exit, you know, then was like, go rest, I'll tell you what I want from you tomorrow. And then it's just this like, you're gonna learn how to read.
Which is so wild, especially when Feyre was expecting like Under the Mountain again,
Yes.
essentially, right? Because I think we know that Under the
Mm-hmm.
Mountain was modeled after the Night Court
Yeah.
at this point, correct? So, like, I mean, she's expecting to be whisked back to essentially underneath of a mountain where, there's, similar, like she said, there's no screaming, there's no, like, pleas for help, like, none of that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she's anticipating, and she shows up, is given basically silk pajamas,
Yes.
and says, go to sleep, I'll teach you to read tomorrow. And she's just like, What?
Like, excuse what?
That would
What a
almost feel
power
like its
move.
own form of torture because it's not what you're expecting. It would throw you off.
Yeah. He does say that she like asks him where's the torture and the under the
Mm-hmm.
mountain inspiration, and he says, this is my private residence. That's underneath us in this mountain, and that's my work,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to keep those two separate. Whatever that
I would
means.
too. He loves a work-life balance, as do I.
Yeah,
Also, if I could live in a basically seemingly like moonlit, gorgeous palace or under a mountain, would also choose that.
definitely. Definitely. Let's talk about that moment when Farah's about to run away from her wedding in front of everyone. So she has luckily been saved. Actually, luckily been saved by Rhysand, truly. Um,
Yeah.
but she has like hours to think about what is going to happen. What do you think? How do you? What do you think happened after she left? Like, you're in the spring court. You're one of the guests who didn't
Mm-hmm.
disappear.
Mm-hmm.
You're Farah just was whisked away by the Lord of Darkness, Damon Salvatore, Rhysand. What's the scene that's happening?
Um, I can only imagine chaos. Like there's no other way, I would feel like. So it's either one of two things. Either chaos or it appears that if everything in the Supreme Court is handled by deny and ignore, and they just all go on and go to the reception and pretended like nothing happened. It's one of the two. I really want them to have just gone to this reception and pretended
Could
like
you
nothing happened.
imagine they just go eat a feast and like there's music playing and they're just like, but does Tamlin stay for that or does Tamlin lose his mind?
Oh no, Tamlin definitely goes and destroys a few things, more than likely. That might be a spoiler. We know that he does that. But I
We
feel
know that
like
he
I don't think
destroys things.
we know he destroys things, yes. I feel like everyone else, like all the guests, he's like, oh, like we already. It's so Tamlin and Lucian leave, right? Anthony comes up. Oh well, I mean, we can't let this wonderful feast that we all put together because it's all her hard work, and she's really sad that all
Hmm.
of this that she put together has gone to waste. So she's like, wait, let's go be merry. Like we can't fix it now. We're gonna leave that up to our wonderful High Lord and his right hand man. And
Hmm.
then she like starts festivities, and then she like runs off to find Tamlin and tries to comfort him, probably with her body, but that's fine. Goes to comfort him. We don't know. And then once that whole situation happens, she goes back and parties a little hard out.
Parties it up and dallies a little.
It's kind of what I think is happening. I think Lucian, bless him, has a lot happening, but dealing with all of it. I also thought it was really interesting that the first person Feyre tried to like plead with was Lucian.
Yes. What did she think he was going to do? He already told her that he cannot. He is her friend, but he is Tamlin's emissary first.
Yes, and that is such a complicated. I have very mixed feelings about that with him because I know that's such a complicated place for him to be in, and I'm sure he can tell that she's hesitating. I don't know how much. Like we now know that Rhysand has like a direct line into her mind and can hear her. I'm sure he can see the hesitancy, but I'm curious if he like. I don't think Lucian knows why. Like I don't think Farah's expressed any of her
Hmm.
like concerns like that to him
Yeah.
that we know of.
Do you think that Tamlin's gonna chalk it all up to, oh, Farah just had a meltdown, everything's fine?
I don't think Tamlin noticed. I think he just thought that she was walking kind of slow, and then Rhysand
No, he
appeared. I
did.
think he
He
was
has
so.
like a moment where he's like, Farah, like, come on. And she's like,
Oh, that's true. I guess she steps back.
she steps back,
I
yeah.
don't know. I don't think he attributes it to him at all. I think he's so conceited that he's not going to attribute it to him. I think he's just going to attribute it to stage fright, and there's too many people.
Mm.
I
Yes,
think
he
that's it.
does view her as that sort of blushing, shy bride, I think.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, if she really wants to, she could pass it off being like, I heard Rhysand in my head. He was there, and I got
She
freaked
could.
out, and then he appeared. If I
She
was Feyre,
could.
to be honest, probably would pull that card.
Honestly, yes. Honestly, yeah. I
If
am
she didn't want to
very,
have an upfront conversation about it,
yeah. I'm very
I would
intrigued to
probably pick.
see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because I'm slightly changing the subject. So
Oh, I'm very interested to see like how this plays out. Not only her week with Brysan, but also like what she comes home to.
I agree. If she doesn't come home and shove those red rose petals down Dianthy's throat, I feel like she's doing it wrong. But
Agreed.
that's what I think she should do.
What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, it was mostly about the red rose petals. That was
Okay.
it. That was I
Yeah.
had some strong feelings about those rose petals.
Yes.
I do think that as it gets closer, because I would be really anxious about it, like knowing that because we're assuming she's not communicating with the spring court during this whole time, so she just has this week
Mm-hmm.
to build up this anxiety about going back and what's going to happen, and like she doesn't know what Tamlin's gonna do or how. Like, I mean, in theory, he could just be like, "I'm done with you," and kick her out, and she doesn't really have anywhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she can't go home. She can't stay in the spring court. She doesn't know much about the other courts. She doesn't really have a place if that happens. That would be really scary of a situation
Yeah.
to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Wait till next week.
Wait till next week.
Or read it yourself.
Or
Go
read it yourself.
Go read it. You'll know.
Go
We
read
know.
it.
We know what happens, but you can
We
go figure
do.
it out.
If you haven't read this book before and this is your first time reading it, I'm so excited for you. This is such a good book.
It is such a good book. This is one of those that people always talk about, like, what book could I wish I could reread again for the first time? This is definitely one like that for me. It's so good.
Yeah, agreed.
Boo.
Okay,
Boo
guys.
Tamlin.
Boo Tamlin. I'm leaving that part in. Boo
You
Tamlin.
definitely should. Boo. I don't think at this point anyone can. Also, why did I do that? I meant to go down, but it only got halfway over. Boo.
All right.
Gross.
Well, I guess that's it, folks. We'll see you next time for chapters 6 through 10 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.